Hello, everyone. I am Carola Gregorich, and we are talking with Dave Mull, our Carson, Colorado Railway Organization's president. You might remember him from earlier videos on this channel. Welcome, Dave.
Hi there. How are you today?
Thanks for agreeing to talk to us and walk us through the key moments of the fifth annual inspection we performed on SP 18 and just finished in late October. Before we step into those key moments, the crucial, the funny, the memorable, would you please take us through the why and what is behind the fifth annual inspection for steam locomotives?
This is an inspection that is required by the FRA, the Federal Railroad Administration, and this has to be done every 5 years. We have a normal inspection done every year where the FRA guys will show up and we do a hydro test and a few other things, but this is quite a bit more intense. So in the case of number 18, we had to pull the jacketing off in front of the cab and behind the cab, which would be inside the cab, rather, and all of the Staybolt caps. Now, Staybolt cap is a cover that goes over a Staybolt, which is a round-headed bolt with a slot in it. Looks like a big screw, but those hold the inside of the boiler to the outside of the boiler. Every one of those caps had to come off. We had to make new gaskets for them, and every one of them got hit with a brass hammer to see if it was broken internally. And the way you do that is merely just tap it with a hammer, and you can tell it's sort of like a dull thud if it's broken, and it has more of a ring if it isn't. So fortunately, every one of the stables got to be about 150 or more that are in this locomotive, and they're all the way around the back head of the boiler. This would be the part right in the cab, and then right this side of the or behind the steam dome. So every one of those had to come off, and in doing that, all the appliances or the such as the injectors had to come off the locomotive. The piping that all runs from the air compressor into the cab and out of the cab, all of that had to come off as well. So it's a pretty major teardown. It's a very intense little inspection. We passed with flying colors. Actually, the inspector told me when he was all done, they actually brought two of them out. One guy was training another guy, and they told me that that was the driest locomotive they had inspected. And by driest, it means we fill it up with water and we pressurize it, get it up to 220 psi. And there again, we go in and tap each one of the welded stay bolts, and we look for leaks, all of this stuff. And in our case, there were absolutely no leaks at all. It was amazing. We've got a good crew, and those boys did a nice job of taking it apart and putting it back together.
Thank you. That's very interesting, and you alluded already to a couple of those details. So we started this fifth annual inspection right after the Steam Up event that we had for the public at Laws in March of 2023. So what is your rough estimate of how much it actually took to complete the inspection?
It's a pretty major teardown. We were down for, well, I suppose, about 14 months or so total, I believe. We were successful in refiring it again just a couple of months ago. So
What about in hours? Like how many work sessions? How many volunteer hours?
we probably looking at figures somewhere around 2,000 to 2,500 hours, volunteer hours. We probably had 8 or 9 work parties, plus we had a couple of volunteers that would show up there while there was no one else there. One of them being Chris Dreyer would come over and do some of the lapping. You know, that's a very tedious job. You're actually putting a lapping compound on the throttle was one thing he had to do. All the valves in the cab had to be relapped. Lapping is merely facing the valve so that it won't leak. And leaky throttles are very, very bad things. So Mr. Dryer was there for, I would say at least a 40-hour week total, doing just nothing but lapping. And we sincerely appreciate that. We're talking dollars and cents. With the product that we had to buy in order to re-jacket, we had to buy some new brick, I believe, and we bought a soot buster with the help of the Narrow Gauge Preservation Society and Jimmy Booth. So there were probably about $5,000 or $6,000 spent of our funds to get the Staybolt inspection done.
Based on the videos that we posted over the last years, and I'll link those at the end screen as well as in the descriptions, our viewers likely know a lot of what was going on and what was accomplished. How about like the top 5 memorable, funny, important, crucial key moments of the whole evolution?
Funny is sometimes not a good word to use around a steam locomotive, but there was one instance, and for the folks that have gotten the calendar, they'll see Charlie's in a completely enclosed suit when he went to do the tube buster, which cleans the inside of the flue tubes. And through a miscommunication with one of our volunteers there, the fan that was meant to suck the dust and soot out of the smoke box from the firebox got turned around backwards. So Charlie ended up a little darker than he usually is because of that.
Well, good thing he had that suit on.
He was completely masked and sooted up. It's an incredibly dirty job. Marco drew the short straw, with him being about less than 5 foot tall, to climb inside the boiler through the steam dome and measure the thickness of the dry pipe. Now, the dry pipe comes from the throttle valve in the steam dome and goes all the way forward from there to the 2 branch pipes that lead to the steam cylinders. And part of the requirements of this FRA inspection is to note what the thickness is of those pipes, the ones inside and outside both. So ours passed, and it's an incredibly dirty job, and it's also very cramped. But Marco was a real trooper by going in and getting those measurements for us. And thank you again for that, Marco.
Yeah, I remember seeing him go in. It's the steam dome getting in there. That's definitely a confined space. It's incredible. Yeah. Anything else that comes to mind?
Scott is an incredible guy when it comes to figuring stuff out. He actually crawled in the tender and lapped the water legs, which are they're a goofy looking valve that actually shuts the water off to the locomotive in the case of maybe the pipes would break or you're going to lay it up for a day or two. But Scott was in there for a full 8 hours lapping these, and that's not a fun job by any means. But
Another special little fact, non-destructive evaluation. You talked already about the dry tube, but I remember we were also looking at the tube sheet, and there were all kind of fun colors being developed.
right, that is a method of looking for cracks in metal. And it requires a 2-part. You paint it first with a red spray paint, and then you put an activator over that. You had to do the drawbar, which is the heavy piece of steel. This hooks the locomotive to the tender, and it has to be checked for cracks at every inspection. We also checked the tube sheet in the firebox. Nothing showed up on the non-destructive test.
Any other crucial moments you'd like to highlight?
There's always something funny going on there. But the real nice thing about the group of volunteers that we have is they all work real well together. We've got guys that like lapping. We've got guys that don't mind climbing under the locomotive to do the grease cellars, and that's an incredibly dirty job as well. A little bit more about the camaraderie there. Kevin Frew came to us here a year or so ago. Kevin was a professional chef and has owned a couple of restaurants in his past. And he came and asked if he could help. And I said, sure, you want to get dirty? And he said, no, not really, but I would love to cook for you guys. And so now we have a professional chef on staff. He gets the same pay as the rest of the guys. It's at zero factor. He makes wonderful meals with his special friend Jerry. They serve absolutely excellent meals at every work party he's able to attend. It's a big deal. We try to feed the guys breakfast, lunch, and dinner on sometimes, and just lunch and dinner on other times. The other thing is that after the 5 o'clock whistle goes off, I make sure there's a frosty elixir if they would care to have one. It's no work after that. We're just bench racing steam locomotives at that point.
And that reminds me on something you may have touched on it, but our volunteers are not just local volunteers. They are really coming from all over the place.
We have a few of the guys are local. We've got guys from Lone Pine. We've got guys from all over the country that come and help. Come from Nevada, Montana, Colorado, Los Angeles area, Pasadena. It's really an amazing project. It really is. The people just come together.
Anything else that comes to mind?
No, I think most people know the history of the old locomotive. She came to the Owens Valley, I think it was 28 of the Nevada, California, Oregon line. She ran up there from 1911 when she showed up brand new out of Baldwin, December 1911. And she ran up and down the Owens Valley until 1954 when they retired number 8, which is up in Sparks now, and 18. And due to the railroad brat named Anna Kelly, she was able to get it and put it in the park in Independence. She told the president of Southern Pacific, you're probably just going to give it to Disneyland anyhow. Why don't you put it in our park? And by God, he did. It's been there since 1954. And it looked pretty sad that the years that I would see it there, every time you go by it, it would look pretty sad. And then somebody would care about it and do something for a while. And then the next 4 or 5 years later, it looked pretty sad. But a gentleman by the name of Myron Alexander came into my parts store in Lone Pine here, about 97, I believe it was, with a giant grease fitting, threw it up on the counter and said, I need a tool to grease that. I said, what in the heck is that off of? And he told me it's a locomotive in the park in Independence. And I've talked to the museum about cleaning it up. It looks pretty sad. And I said, I agree with you there. I'll find you the tool to grease that and I'll help you clean it up. So that led to a 2010 when we officially got a okay with the county to run the thing. That made the whole thing worthwhile. Before that, we were just messing around there and taking it apart, cleaning it up, putting it back together. It is, I believe, the only Southern Pacific narrow gauge locomotive that is operational in America. There's a lot of narrow gauge locomotives out there, but I haven't tracked any of them to Southern Pacific yet.
That's pretty cool. So what does the future hold?
We're going to try to stay home with it in 2025, and we're going to fire it up for the 4th of July in Independence. We're going to do a special in April to fire it up as well, and probably one more time towards the end of the year. But down the road for 2026, we've got some big plans. There is the narrow gauge railroad up in Sumter, Oregon, that has invited us up there. Now, with that invite, we need to come up with the funds to truck the locomotive up there and back. They're working on this from their end. We're going to work on it from our end. It's going to take about $25,000. You load that up, take it up there, drop it off, and then 2 weeks or so later, bring it back. So it's a costly endeavor to do that. But we've always thought of our little locomotive as a ambassador to Inyo County. We need to take it out and show people what can be done if you put your mind to it. Second thing that's we're working on, and I believe this is pretty much a for sure, is the Nevada State Railroad Museum in Boulder has offered to help us move the locomotive over there and run it for railroad days going on over there. I don't have the exact date of that in front of me, but that's also one of our plans. If everything works out the way we'd like it to, we can come up with the funding and make it work. We'll have it to 2 different narrow gauge railroads sometime in 2026.
Wow, that sounds exciting. Thank you for sharing this with us. I am looking forward to capture all of our evolutions here on this channel.
Well, thank you for all you do, too. I appreciate it.